Let's get to the top 6 right now and see where it stands. And we'll go 1 through 6. Cavman, our producer, always tells us to go in the most dramatic order. Alabama holds number 1. The Crimson Tide has been ranked number 1 in the college football playoff rankings more than all other schools combined. Just behind the Crimson Tide, I expect we're going to see Notre Dame, and we do. So 1-2 stays the same. Again, Ohio State got back on the field against Michigan State last week. Would it be enough to push past number 3, Clemson? It would not. So Clemson holds on to number 3, and the Tigers and Fighting Irish have the week off before their ACC championship game in Charlotte next week. At number 4, it is Ohio State. I want you to take a look at the number of wins. Everyone knows Ohio State passes the eye test and looks good. Notre Dame has twice as many wins as Ohio State. Clemson and Alabama have 4 more wins. That's a month's worth of wins more than Ohio State. How many more times will the Buckeyes get on the field? Will they do anything impressive enough to hold on to that spot? Because just behind the Buckeyes and pushing hard is Texas A&M. But A&M lost a game this week against Ole Miss. That could have been an opportunity for them, and still the head-to-head victory for Texas A&M against Florida is carrying the day. It might be annoying to Gator fans, but the fact of the matter is this. They're playing Alabama in the SEC championship game. As long as Florida doesn't stumble against LSU, they beat Alabama, they're going to the playoff. So the fact that they're 6 now really doesn't matter very much. So Ohio State holds 4. A&M continues to stay a spot above Florida. Kirk, what do you think?
Yeah, we continue to bring up 5 and 6 or a moot point. That'll work itself out depending on what Florida does over the course of their next couple games. If they beat Bama, they're in. They go by A&M. If they lose, they're out. So really, it's irrelevant. I think the focus is going to be on Ohio State, and it should be. You just brought up the number of games. I know that things are happening right now with the Big Ten, trying to figure out what might happen with Ohio State this weekend. They don't have a game as of right now. They might end up having a game, which would get them to 6 games, and then if they were to win that game, playing a conference championship would be 7. The question I have, Joey, would be if they don't get a game, right, and they're sitting there at 5, I think the athletic directors have made it very clear they're willing to reevaluate how many games you have to play to get in to the Big Ten championship. If they take that 6 mark away and say it's 5, and that would open up Ohio State to get to Indianapolis, if they were to win that game and finish 6-0 and be a Big Ten champ, it'd be interesting to see if that would be enough for the committee to put them in with only playing 6 games.
I can't imagine that would not be enough. I think the other scenario you got to look at is, let's just say they stay at 5. And I think if you're a Buckeye fan, you sort of breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief, the fact that Texas A&M's game this weekend got canceled, because that's the team breathing down your neck. You already mentioned it. The Florida situation is going to play itself out. So the better scenario, or the more nervous scenario, would be if Ohio State stays at 5. They don't get the next game this weekend. They don't reschedule someone. They don't get to the Big Ten championship game. Are those 5 enough? Reese mentioned it. They've absolutely passed the eye test, but it's only at 5 games. What happens if they don't get a chance to play again? I would be nervous if I'm Ohio State, but I feel a little better. A&M does not get to go back on the field and prove their point again this weekend.
And Joey, I got to believe, even if Ohio State doesn't get that 6th game and get into a Big Ten championship game, even if they only play 5, but let's say they get Iowa, a team that the committee really respects, who's been climbing the rankings, who's now won 5 in a row, and they get them in Big Ten Champions Weekend, and they blow them out and they dominate. I think that still makes a very strong case for the Buckeyes getting into the playoff. I understand, obviously, conference championships, that's one of the factors and variables the committee assesses, but in this day and age of COVID this year, because of all the different amounts of games people are playing, we talk about it every week, it's got to come down to the eye test and what you see on film. Even through 5 games, and if it ends up being 6 games, I still think that's enough to know who Ohio State is. The offense is explosive, Justin Fields is still a really good player, their D-line is dominant, and their secondary is average. That's who they are. But you know, we also know they're the best team in the Big Ten. We know that right now. They already beat Indiana. If they go out and beat an Iowa team that only lost to Northwestern by 1 point, with their quarterback Petrus only making a 2nd career start, and they dominate that game, to me as a committee, whether or not they have the trophy for the Big Ten championship, that's enough to me to know this is a team that's making a strong case to get in.
I think it's interesting, and I'd be curious to hear you guys and what you think. But when I watch A&M, I don't think there's enough special for me to go, man, that one loss. By the way, it was a boat race. I mean, It wasn't even close with Alabama. It was a beatdown. And I don't watch them against Auburn even a week ago or the week before that against LSU. I think A&M would have needed to look really, really good to this point. I think they're a really good football team. I just don't think, when I look at them, that I think they're better than Ohio State. And it's not like their resume dictates them jumping over Ohio State, whether they're 5-0 or 6-0, and it's a couple games difference, because I don't think it matters that much, because I haven't seen enough dominance from A&M to say I need to move them above Ohio State.
Yeah, this is not an A&M discussion to me at all. This is about what happens in the conference championship games. If Ohio State's sitting there, if they go to Indianapolis and they win and they're 6-0 and they put on a Big Ten championship crown and they're Big Ten champs, I don't care if they played 5 games, 6 games. If they're crowned Big Ten champs, what happens in Charlotte, what happens in Atlanta is going to dictate where Ohio State is. If Alabama beats Florida, Ohio State would be in. Ohio State fans should be the biggest Alabama fans going, because if Alabama knocks Florida out, I'm just telling you, if Alabama knocks Florida out, Ohio State is in the 4. If Florida beats Alabama and Clemson beats Notre Dame, Ohio State will be left out. It'll be Clemson, Notre Dame, Florida, and Alabama. Ohio State's out. So Ohio State needs to pull, or Ohio State fans need to pull for Alabama and win out. And if they do that, I think they're one of the 4 teams.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.